Hello, welcome, welcome. I see lots of people coming in, getting into the webinar of today. Please, as you come in, tell us in the chat, where are you coming from? Where are you watching this from? Let's get everybody in the chat. This is always an amazing thing to see everybody coming from lots of places. We're going to give a few seconds for people to still get into it. And just want to welcome everyone into our webinar of today. It is the 28th of February 2024. This is our webinar number 4 of the series of this year called Soil Food Webs in Permaculture and Beyond. This is our last webinar of this series. So thanks everybody for being here. Today we have amazing people joining us in the panelist group and lots of subjects, presentations, and also Q&A at the end. So I see everybody still putting where they're coming from. That's really, really nice. Welcome everybody. And we're going to start here with little bit of today, what's going to be happening. So as I said before, this is our webinar number 4, Why Soil Matters and How to Further Your Education in Soil Regeneration. We're going to have some introductions to get to meet our panelists. And we're going to move on into seeing a video that's an extract from one of our other webinars where we are going to be talking about why soil matters. Then we're going to have a presentation from one of our CTP graduates, Simeon Kleinsasser. He's going to be telling us about a case study and more about his work. And we're going to watch a little bit of the Level Up Your Soil package information for the ones that are interested in joining us here in the school. And finally, we're going to have some time for Q&A. So remember, there is a Q&A section in the Zoom where you can add your questions, and we're going to be answering them by the end. This is a total time of around an hour and a half. So without further ado, let's get started. A little bit of instructions here for everything to run smoothly. You will be muted during the webinar, so we ensure that the panelists are going to have good audio quality. As I said before, you have the option to enter your questions into the Q&A section. Remember, this is a separate section from the chat. But in the chat, we welcome everybody also to participate and get to know other Soil Food Web people around, and of course, enjoy the time that we have here. Okay, let's start with the introduction of today's panelists. So first of all, we have Dr. Elaine. Hello and welcome.
I am the president of Soil Food Web School as well as Soil Food Web Incorporated. In Incorporated, we do the research work that we're going out and discovering, those, and where's the cutting edge and how do we manage all of these things. So around the world, we've got things going on, and it's a lot of fun kind of bouncing around to different parts of the world and seeing where everybody is. So I've been working for approximately 48 years in this area of science. What do these microorganisms in the soil or in the water do to the growth of plants, to the concentrations of various organic materials in that soil? So there's no end of projects that need to be done desperately so that we can get people converted over from their toxic chemical ways of building, of growing plants to the biological system. And so just an example today of the work that's being done So Simeon, I'm looking forward to your talk about the work that you did for your last project.
Thank you, Elaine. It's always a pleasure to have you here. We have Simeon Kleinsasser. Hi.
Hi, yep, I'm Simeon Kleinsasser. I live down in Madisonville, Tennessee. I'm working with Hawassi Products, developing equipment to help farmers transition away from chemical ag and into the regenerative space. Also focusing on turf specialists and horticulture. I grew up in England and have been into ag my whole life, so I'm excited to use the skills I've learned with the Soul Food Web School and keep applying them to help other people out.
Thank you, Simeon. We're excited to hear more about your project. Loida Vasquez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Loida Vasquez. I am a Soil Food Web School instructor, and I'm also the CTP lead trainer. In addition to working for the Soil Food Web School, I also own my own consulting company called Regenerative Soils 101. Most of my clients are based out of Mexico and the US, but some of them are placed in different parts of the world. Under Regenerative Soils, we basically specialize in helping farmers transition from conventional farming to organic farming systems. And I live in California primarily, but I spend some time in Mexico because I have clients here. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you, Loida. Adam, hi.
Hi, Denise. I think people know at this point that I'm a fungi nerd, that I studied mycorrhizal fungi primarily in my previous career. I've been with the school for about 2.5 years, and just like fungi connect with each other and plants in the ecosystem and try to share resources and information with each other, my role as science communicator here at the school, I try to connect with everybody on staff, in the larger community, in our direct community, in the global movement for soil biological management. And it is a very fun job.
Thank you, Adam. And Carla Portugal, hello.
Hey, Denise. Hi, everyone. I'm a lead scientist here at the school, also a CTP instructor. I have pleasure to work with amazing colleagues and incredible students. So thank you, everyone, for your dedication. And at my consultancy company, Soil Domains, I specialized in environmental impact and ecological restoration projects, allied with everything we learned from Elaine. So it's a pleasure to be here again.
Thank you, Carla. And finally, just to present myself, my name is Denise. I am a CTP mentor. I've been part of the school for almost 2 years now, and I work with students from all over. So as you can see today, we have an amazing group of people, lots of knowledge. So it's going to be super nice. First, we're going to start with this video. So again, if you have any questions, you can always put them on the chat, on the Q&A, and always chat is available as well.
So first of all, and we want to talk about dirt versus soil. So I would like to know what the panelists think about these controversial words.
What's the difference between the brown side and the green side? Yeah, it's one side is green and the other's brown. But why? We are always trying to look for the reason that you don't have the production, that we don't have the microorganisms. What were the microorganisms' jobs? What were they doing in that soil? And care about the improvement in the plants that we're trying to grow in that soil. There's recent papers out where they were looking at the amount of nutrient, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium, the whole list, without biology in the soil, that they could have very little to no nutrient uptake into the plants. You had to go out and you had to put the soluble material in, and who would ever get the precisely correct amount of soluble nitrogen or phosphorus or whatever applied to the soil and not have to worry about, is it too little? Is it too much? Is it going to rain tomorrow? In which case that means all of those soluble nutrients are going to be moving downhill and they're not going to stay. So you used all that money, you did all that work, and all of that nutrient is in the next pasture below, or the one below that, or actually made it to the river this time. So we care about whether something is dirt or whether something is green. And the brown means that we have very little to no organisms present in that soil. What's the difference? And that's really where that definition of soil is not dirt. You have to have life. You have to have the organisms present in that soil in order to have those microorganisms deliver those soluble nutrients just around the root system, not 5 feet away, not 10 feet away in the dirt. You're never going to get that nutrient to your plant if there's that much distance. So you want to keep the distances short. And the only way you can do that is have predators in the system. So somebody else's turn now.
I guess that I'll jump in there. Although I love the way that you said all of that, Elaine. So I don't know if I can enhance it much, except I will say one thing I heard in grad school from a professor. You find dirt on the bottom of your shoes, but soil is an ecosystem. And I think that's a really helpful definition. If we're just looking at the minerals and the sand, silt, clay, and all of those components, what I'm surprised at when I look at the world of research that I came out of is how many of us, and I include myself in the past in this, are really kind of doing like dirt research instead of soil research. We're looking in these highly degraded systems, and I remember adding some compost or whatever. I didn't even check what was in the compost and wrote up a paper about it and said, like, the compost helped, but I don't know why it helped. And of course it helped. It added some nutrients and all that. And then I got here to the school and I was like, oh, I already had the basic understanding of this from my study of fungi, but Elaine, you and Dr. Portugal, others here at the school helped me go, let's expand my framework here. This is about the life in the soil and all these really cool relationships that are going on. So there's my 2 cents.
You don't like those weeds? Make sure you get the right organisms in there to take them out.
And then, like that, you opened another Pandora box, Elaine. What's a weed? But question for next slide or future slide. Nothing much to add here, but it's like everything in this planet, life is involved. So no matter which field research you get here, when you talk about soil research, make sure that you are including the biological component on that. I'm not talking about just academic research, your field trials as well. The simple assessments that are going to do in your backyard or any testings that are going to do in your backyard, put biology as one main components because this changes everything in your results.
I almost used a picture of my neighbor down the street because they were out tilling their wheat field the other day and it was just like this, plumes of dirt flying away. They destroyed or are destroying so much of the life in this soil and therefore it's unstable. And so I'm just curious, what do y'all think? Can humans, how long can we continue to do agriculture this way?
Yeah, this is a deep question. Like you said, Denise, with no easy answer. According to FAO, we have 6 decades, depending on location of the planet you are. So we're not going to see a future. We're not even talking about our kids or our grandkids. It kind of puts me on a deep despair because it demands a global changing, but what can we do on a daily basis? What we are doing here is study, testing, looking for what can I do better around me so I can show folks, my neighbors, my clients that it's possible and it's much easier than they think. They can even make more money with regenerative agriculture practices. So I think that we need to take this change by our hands and not just rely on governments as well, because us as a society, we have the power and, in my perspective, the obligation to push this change in the system. If we just wait, I've been kind of downside here, but we cannot wait anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. We need to show that the changes are feasible, the changes are for good, and it's up to us push the system to change for those that cannot fight the system.
And we need information from like all of those different levels that you were talking about. We have to have growers showing us what the improvement actually is with these kinds of organisms. How do you add those organisms to know for certain that you're going to get an increase of tenfold amount of good nitrogen usable by human beings when you eat it instead of a toxic form? You've got to get that part of the system. How much more money is that grower going to make when they're first starting out? Where do they expect to get their capital from? Well, you've got to go to the local banks. And if the local banks have the provision that says you can't, this bank will not support anyone who does not have an insurance policy, that if they'll always get the nutrients that they need, but it's all in inorganic fertilizer. And when you take them to say, well, I can do it with a biological nitrogen fixer, they can't get. So there's a lot of, right there, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done in governments and in different factors. We've got to get people trained, and they have to be, well, we need a couple banks that will work with us in order to accept these approaches to making certain that we have nutrient contents. As I was talking about right at the beginning, there is a paper that we've just pulled out where they show all the percent nitrogens, percent phosphorus, I think sulfur was in there, and calcium, showing how much of that nutrient was maintained in the dirt as opposed to the soil. And it was always quadrupled or higher percentage of nutrients being present in usable form by the organisms that ate that material, such as human beings.
I completely agree. And the only thing that really gives me hope is that I'm seeing across the last 15 years since I got excited about soils, an awakening in both large and little places and in communities like our learning community here at the school. I just spoke to someone a few days ago that's working in Vietnam. It's really exciting. Vietnam is going for regenerative agriculture in a big way. So there's money that's never been there before. There's attention that's never been there before. And I fully believe that we who might have been called the fringe 10, 20 years ago, we're going to have the system that doesn't collapse. Shall I move on, Denise?
Yes, please. Water infiltration and structure. So talking about more of the physical characteristics of soil compared to dirt. What does this do for agriculture, for plants, for the biology? What are the difference between these? So we can see here in the pictures, of course, a little bit of that, but I would like for you guys in the panel to share a little bit more about your thoughts in these and why is that important for us? Why do we care about it?
It's really important to understand the structure that's present in soil. You can't have that structure in the soil if all you are playing with is dead dirt. No biology to make the aggregates, micro aggregates by bacteria, macro aggregates by the other critters in the soil, everything from a little bit larger than a sugar molecule, for example, that you can feel and touch and hold it up to the light. You can see the size of that material. Those are micro aggregates, and then the macro, you can pick them up in your fingers and quite clear what it is. So we want to have all of that dirt converted into soil, because once you've got that conversion in that soil to the aggregated state, you're going to hold water in every single one of those open spaces inside that handful of compost or dirt. So this is a comparison as well of what happens when you're dealing with a handful of dirt. You can see it's passing right through, just right on the ground, not holding on to anything. If they were holding on, if the water in that handful of dirt was holding any nutrients, guess where all your nutrients went? As soon as that water that was in that handful of dirt is gone, there's no way to get it back. Whereas with the soil building structure, at least 50% of the air cavities in that structure typically are going to be filled with water. Now you've got water for growing plants late in the growing season, even though it's dry.
Well, I just wanted to mention that you can Google this procedure to look at the structure and stability and kind of water dynamics of a sample. Some people call it a SLAK test or a SLAKE test. SLAKE. I did this recently with the new course that we're starting to sell at the school, the Soil Food Web Essentials course. They wanted someone to get their hands dirty, and they asked me. So I went and dug a hole in my yard in an area I want to turn into a garden. And when I added a handful of the material to water, it stayed relatively intact, which I was happy to see because there's just a monoculture lawn there now, and I didn't know how good it would be. And then I went out to another local area here that is not treated so well. I took a handful, I put it in some water, and it turned to soup, is what I called it. Just brown water instantly. And that tells me that the life is not there creating the integrity for that soil matrix, the structure. And that means that air and water and things are not either infiltrating, maybe they're hitting a compaction layer, like you mentioned, Elaine, but also if a really big windstorm comes up or a big rain event, a lot of your soil might go into the ditch, or your dirt might go into the ditch. And so this is substantial, and you can see it so easily with your own eyes if you set up a test similar to this simple one.
How do microorganisms improve plant outcomes and suppress disease?
When I first got here to the school, because of having so many experiences where people are dirt farming, I was like, okay, if you don't do XYZ, you're going to get diseases in these crops, right? And that's why the nearby farmer here is tilling that field, because they're going from monoculture wheat to monoculture wheat, and it's nature doesn't like a vacuum. So something came into that wheat field. Potential pathogens float around in the atmosphere, right? So they landed there, they got there somehow, and they're worried that when the seed of the next wheat crop is young, it'll get attacked and killed by pathogens. So they're out there pulverizing the soil to try to reduce that pathogen population. Elaine, you taught me that there's a way that we can just create an environment that doesn't favor the pathogen. And especially because there also are, by the way, are lots of organisms that in the right environment won't attack plants. But if something changes, if they run out of other food sources or the plants get weakened or whatever, then they're happy to turn something on and attack the plants. So it's about maintaining this disease suppressive environment. And when you have a complete soil food web, especially in the root system, some little pathogenic fungi comes in there. Guess what? There's someone to eat them. There's someone to inhibit them. There's someone to compete for resources so that it doesn't bloom out of control, right? But in modern, I shouldn't say modern, in chemically managed agricultural systems, no one's home, or a few bacteria are there, and that pathogenic organism can just go crazy in that system.
You think you are going to stop me from getting dinner?
I would like to add something here related to thinking the way that ecosystems work. Sometimes we have the idea of an ecosystem being in balance or in a well state where there's no pathogens, there's no detrimental organisms. And that's not the reality. The reality is that an ecosystem will have plenty of different organisms trying to compete with each other. And again, this concept of the beneficial microorganisms out-competing the detrimental microorganisms, it's something that's going to be over and over in the proper way if the ecosystem is in the proper balance with the right organisms, right? And this is quite interesting. This weekend, I was doing a walk with some friends in the forest, and we were noticing a lot of the things that attack plants, right, in the forest, not talking about agricultural land. And there's plenty of insects and a lot of relationships of autism or diseases. And sometimes we have this idea that a forest is, everything is healthy, right? Everything is perfect, everything is good. But that's not the reality. Even in a healthy forest, there's always going to be competition. The thing with the forest is that we have all of the groups of organisms in a balanced way that can outcompete and can thrive even under stressing conditions. So the only way we can do that is by having all of the groups of the microorganisms in a balanced state. So thinking a little bit more outside the box of good and bad, or just killing everything bad because bad things should never exist, is more of a vision of how can we have the good guys present in order to outcompete when stress comes. And the stress is actually good. The stress always will promote the organism that's being stressed to create defense mechanisms, right? To create symbiotic relationships with other organisms in order to protect itself and to gain adaptation. So learning a little bit more about the ecology and getting to understand this makes us understand more about how this actually works, and also to be able to explain it to other people, to communicate it better. But I think, and my hope is that we're getting much more into this subject. Right now, everything about the microbiome, for example, in the body, it's getting more and more something that people talk about, right? We know how important it is to have all of these good microorganisms, all of these good bacteria in our gut. It's not about just killing bacteria in general. It's understanding that having the good bacteria will be beneficial for killing the bad bacteria when it comes. We know about this, and it translates into basically every ecosystem, including the soil. So I think understanding this more and more is going to be beneficial, but of course, there's already a lot of research about this that's always interesting to know about and to have present when we are working with communicating this to other people and also understanding what we're doing. So great. So we move on to the next one, nutrient cycling. So here we have the book, How Do Organisms Support Optimal Plant Nutrition? So we have here a beautiful image of the cycle of many of the organisms. This is not all. There's always much more organisms involved in this cycling, and how they all relate to each other and how they relate to plant growth as well. So who would like to start?
I just had a new thing come across my awareness today, and I thought about it in terms of the poop loop. So I'd love to share it. Oftentimes, what's recommended to people who want to produce a lot, they want to sell food, especially, right? Whatever the food is, or fiber, there are cotton and there are other crops, it's recommended to them that they bump up the concentration of especially nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to a fairly high levels not actually typically seen in natural systems, right? And they're doing that to try to kind of give the plants a boost, especially when they're young, almost like steroids or something, right? And then it's really, really inefficient. We know that a lot of it is wasted. It turns into greenhouse gases that are very powerful. It goes into rivers and then eventually to the ocean and causes algal blooms, which are a big problem, other environmental problems with water quality. And so even friends of mine that I interact with who are really into chemical agriculture, they're like, oh yeah, well, the best place to put the nutrients would be inside of the bodies of organisms. And I was like, that to me is the poop loop, right? We got to get all that nitrogen. If it's just a free floating high concentration of ammonium or nitrate, it will eventually leach out of that system. But if it's nitrogen in the biological organisms, in the bodies of bacteria and fungi, but then really didn't have much knowledge about these predatory organisms until I came to the school and took the foundation courses. And I've researched a lot more about protozoa and nematodes in particular. And it's astounding that the nutrients will all get locked up in the bacteria and fungi unless you have those predators. That's the poop loop that Elaine explains in the foundation courses. And them just living their lives and eating what they eat, which is fungi and bacteria, sometimes each other as well, they are excreting excess nutrients. And so what you want is a plant root system where it's dynamic. The nutrients are cycling really rapidly in there. They're going into the body of a fungi for a moment and then being released when a nematode eats that fungi. And then the plant takes up that nitrogen. It's so much more efficient than the standard way of saying, oh, we got to get this nitrate up to 100 parts per million early in the system and through one dose of commercial fertilizers. And by the way, the reason why I laugh at the idea that biological systems are more expensive is that I have a bunch of friends that are farmers and ranchers here in the middle part of the US, and all of them started complaining when we had some global supply chain disruptions that their nitrogen fertilizer bills went up 600% in one season. That is not sustainable. Anyway, just wanted to share that idea.
And a fair amount of what we're talking about now is not only the who eats who and release of nutrients. We're talking about the movement when you have a catastrophic condition, catastrophe strikes, and all of a sudden once was a forest is now basically converted into a dirt land because of that catastrophe. It's going to take a while for the organisms in that so disturbed area. Now, anything that had large structure of any kind, so the microarthropods, the earthworms, the fungal hyphae, the protozoa even, have been wiped out. And all that's left, well, in some cases, all that's left is nothing. It's just dirt, no organisms in it at all. We were playing around with samples in Hawaii, for example, that at sites where it had been volcanic. Well, it is volcanic and it had erupted. We took that material, took it back to the microscope. There were no organisms present at all. So how long does it take for these things to start to occur? Some can be overnight. Some can take 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Mother Nature doesn't really care. She'll get you there sooner or later. So we need to understand that that disturbance was so strong that you're not gonna move quickly into the next stage of succession, where bacteria are the most important thing to get things started. Bacteria don't make very large aggregates, but at least they start making some aggregates that are maybe 2 to 3 times the size of the bacteria. So you can have a little bacterial condominium out there in the middle of the area that has no structure at all. Well, keep building. Pretty soon the bacteria and the fungi the bacteria can be releasing nutrients that the fungi need, and there's going to be structure built, and we start moving from just weeds. It's the only thing that can grow typically in a soil. Is it soil? Well, it's got bacteria in it, so dare we say soil? Absolutely. But it's not going to do much because it's only going to grow weedy kinds of plants. They're things that most of us consider as not wanted. But in a certain stage of succession, it's the only thing you've got to move to the next stage, where fungi start evening up with the bacteria, where the protozoa and the nematodes start really having a function, and nutrient cycling really starts moving along. So the poop loop picture here is one where we've got an equal amount of bacteria and fungi, and protozoa, nematodes are performing very important functions. And we try to go through all of those things when we're trying to understand what is the ratio of fungi to bacteria that this plant needs, so it will grow as rapidly as possible, be able to prevent diseases from attacking and being successful, from preventing evaporation water in that soil, so that the water infiltrates through down to that lower level where the plant can come and get the nutrients down there and be able to take that above ground now and grow good crops.
So plants and microorganisms are partners. What do you think about this? It's a little bit related to what we have already been talking about. And this last one reminds me of one of the things Dr. Elaine just said, which is both under but also over, right? So we want to have them present everywhere in the plant. I don't know if you want to add something else, and if not, we can move forward in order to get some time to go through the questions as well.
I think that's a great idea, Denise. I asked for help making this particular graphic just recently because I wanted to take it to a presentation and say, through time, as the plant grows, it takes the biology with it, right? It takes it deeper and it takes it up to the canopy. If the seed is planted into soil, which is alive, which is thriving, which has got the diversity and abundance of organisms that they can find each other and partner. And I saw this very much in my research with mycorrhizal fungi, that at some point the population of mycorrhizal spores are so low that the plants don't really find their partners as they're growing. They never really get inoculated or covered with mycorrhizal fungi, and they don't get the benefits from it. So like you said, I think we've summarized this already. I just wanted to remind folks, it's why we focus at the school on like get that top 6 or so inches, 10-ish centimeters of your soil full of living creatures, full of all these beneficial microorganisms, these and these aerobic conditions, because then where you're putting the seed or the seedling, it'll find who it needs to find.
So now we have Simeon, who is going to be presenting his case to us. So why don't you take it up, Simeon?
Thank you. So I'll be showing you the results of my final project for the Soil Food Web Consulting course. It was carried out on an athletic field up in New York. This is a picture of the field in the background. So the study was focusing on how soil biology improves seed germination and uniformity and plant health in turf grass, which is something that I had to get interested in because I was asked to manage a sports field. So move on. So the project background, the reasons for conducting a project in turf using microbes was, in any sport, you need to continually rebuild the ground and rebuild the conditions so that it's safe to play and that it looks nice. Because that's the two criteria for any golf course superintendent or turf manager. It has to look nice and it has to be safe to play on. A lot of the practices in turf are very expensive, very time consuming, and also have a lot of toxic chemicals involved and fertilizer involved to make them look nice. So I was trying to figure out if we could use biology to speed up the germination process of seeds to help increase the time we can rejuvenate a field and make it better. And the key to also germination is turf grass establishment. And then also is uniformity, because if it's patchy, if there's green and then some light yellows, it doesn't look nice. People won't like that. So that's to look uniform. So a little bit about myself. I grew up on a farm in Southeast England. Got into gardening, started growing my own vegetables in 5th and 6th grade, and then got into composting in high school and tried to use different techniques to extend the growing season in high school. And then I moved back over to the US after high school and started an engineering degree down in New York City. From there, I moved on to study the soil food web and do some plant science as well. And then I got a job with Hawassi Products most recently, doing equipment development and consulting and product support for equipment to support farmers regenerating their soils. So that's a very fast overview. The reason I did the turf study was because I got a job as a turf manager for a 57-acre campus up in New York, and was basically given the task of transitioning from conventionally run to regeneratively grown grass and facility maintenance. So this picture was taken after 2 years, so it was 2 years in transition. No chemicals have been used on this field in terms of synthetic nutrients. And also I didn't use any, I used one application of a organic herbicide, but I didn't use any insecticides and I didn't use any fungicides, which is my goal, to eliminate those guys. And it was a lot of extracts, and the field actually looked better after 2 years than it had previously in conventionally run system, and it also had more practices and more games on it, because we went from a junior varsity team to a junior varsity and a varsity team, boys and girls. So it was 4 teams playing on this field. In order to do the project, I had to develop some equipment, just because there wasn't anything available to scale to the size that I was looking for. So I started working with some friends on developing some compost extraction technology, which then turned into Hawassi Products. And we make equipment for extracting biology, composting, and then storage and application. So these are the prototypes I used in my projects. And this is the finished machine that's online right now. You can go buy it and reach out if you have any questions about it. It does 700 gallons an hour in continual production. It's powered by a 110-volt circuit, and it's all stainless steel, easy to clean, and has a really good efficiency of extracting biology. So the goals of the project was to evaluate how compost and compost extracts could change the soil biology, evaluate how biological inputs affect the germination time on turf grass, evaluate the uniformity and percent coverage of the turf grass as it started to grow, and then evaluate nutrient availability in plant sap testing and also in soil chemistry testing. This is how I laid out my project. I had 3 plots biological and 3 plots control. I conducted the project over the space of 1 month, and over that time period, I applied over 4,000 pounds an acre of compost in the form of extract. So I was very aggressive in my extract production. But I just wanted to show over a short period of time that I could increase the biology. I would recommend to do this over more like 2 to 3 years. That's a little more sustainable. So all the data on the graphs are evaluated for p-values and significant differences. This just shows you what I was looking at and what the different stars mean by the data points. So here's some of the results on the biological plots. I managed to increase the fungi significantly over the time period. I started at less than 50 micrograms per gram, and then I got it up to over 150 micrograms per gram, and that's in a 1 month time. And that was with an application every 2 weeks. So it's 4 applications. And there's a picture of some nice fungi, probably Basidiomycete, that was found in some of the assessments. And this also a note is the temperature was dropping, because I did this in October to November. So the temperature was falling as I conducted the project, and I still managed to increase biology. This next one is bacteria. So obviously with grass, you're trying to get about a 0.75 to 1 to a 1-to-1 ratio of fungi to bacteria. So I was trying to bring the bacteria down actually by increasing the predators, because obviously I have a very high number of bacteria in the soil I was dealing with and not very much fungi. So I at least managed to maintain the levels despite the temperatures dropping. So I didn't quite get the reduction I wanted, but it was a shorter study, and I think over time my predators would have started to impact these results a little bit more. I did significantly manage to increase the amount of protozoa, flagellates, and testate amoebas in the soils. And just this one down at the end, basically the reason it fell off is because our temperatures and soil moisture was falling off. And so you would expect the predators to kind of go down deeper into the soil profile because the food resources are moving down just because the temperature is falling. Same with testate amoeba, it's pretty much identical to the flagellates. This is total amoebas, but you can see there's a testate amoeba in the slide. But I did manage to get significant increase of those numbers as well compared to the control. And then same with nematodes. I only actually found nematodes in one of the samples, but there again, had this project gone over a longer period of time, I think we would have seen better increases in nematodes. And also if we would have gone for a complete season compared to the shorter trial that I did, we would have seen nematodes increase. And then the results for days to germination, there was significant faster days to germination in the biological than there was in the control. And this I attribute to the symbiotic relationships between microbes with the actual seeds and giving them the better kind of activating them to start growing faster, and then give them better food resources as they start to grow to push out of the ground. So it's 2 days faster, which is significant in turf, because the faster you can recuperate, the faster you can get back out there, the more games you can play, the more money you can make basically in the turf space. And then same with percent coverage, uniformity. It was a lot more uniform in the biological plots than it was in the control. And that was consistent over the 1 month study as well, which will make a safer playing surface for the athletes and also makes it look nicer. So in conclusion, we did see faster germination. We saw better turf coverage. And then I think over a longer project, we would have seen better nutrient availability and sap test data. That's all available. If you go to hawasseproducts.com on our resource tab, the full report is there. And you can email me with any questions about it. I just didn't have time to go over it all. So that's the results I got from my project. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Simeon, for sharing your project. And it's always nice for us to hear about other students and graduates, of course, stories and cases. So again, if you want to contact him, he's happy to talk with you. Okay, good. Let's move on. So before we go into the Q&A, we are going to watch a short video. This is for the people who is interested in getting to work with us in the school to have the learning experience. And we're going to continue now.
The benefit of being in the Soil Food Web School is you learn a lot of tips and tricks. It taught me what good compost was and what good biology was.
What I've learned, one of the big key things for me is that plants don't need to be fed. With the microbes, they are able to feed themselves and supply themselves everything that they need from the soil.
This, is something that I had never seen before until I took this school. And understanding where you are in this process in your field really helps you make some management decisions.
When we first started this journey, our soils were very degraded. I couldn't find an earthworm to save our lives. We were spending way too much money on fertilizer, and just the consistency from year to year was just not there for us.
I would plant my plants in my soil that I had amended with compost that I purchased, and I'd see really good production in the beginning, and then it would just sort of taper off. I knew you could get bad compost. What I didn't know was how good compost can be when you make it yourself and properly. We've looked at my compost under the microscope, and we've looked at my soil that has had all of the previous compost applied to it in the year before. I had no life, and then Brian and I looked at my soil after I applied the extracts and the compost that I put in the plants and started everything with, to having all of this life.
AgroPure was a farm that reached out to us, really struggling to work within a conventional system. The yields were quite low, so we were able to see over 100% yield increases in these areas. And the second year we saw again about 100% yield increase on top of that.
We never got the productivity that we're getting today. In a month, we are going to get about 20 tons per hectare on grapes in the first year.
What happened between 21 and 22 is our organic matter improved a little bit. Our pH dropped a little bit, so we're headed the right direction. Our EC improved, and all of this led to an increase in growth in our plants. The other thing that changed was our fungal to bacterial ratio. And I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Big picture benefits is lower input costs, which is a big deal. Yields have improved. And we are more self-sufficient as a farm. We were probably saving right out the gate probably anywhere between $100 to $150 per acre. Some of that cost is obviously less tillage, lowering your fuel costs. We've cut out all seed treatment. Majority of our fungicide costs. We cut out between 60 and 100 units of nitrogen. We have no potash or DAP costs, and then we do not use any insecticide. We've cut all those out.
The results that I had from implementing Brian's practices was just phenomenal.
Bringing Miles and Terraforma and the Soil Food Web on board has been probably one of my happiest and best decisions.
For me, it's about trying to leave this soil better than when I found it, so my children don't have to go through some of the challenges that I've had to.
If you are also ready to make the soil better for future generations, here's something you can do today. From now until February 29th, when you sign up for the Level Up Your Soil package, you'll get access to the Foundation courses, our all-new Soil Food Web Essentials course, the Soil Sponge Workshop with educator and author Dee Dee Pershouse, and you'll receive a coupon for $150 off the soon-to-launch Permaculture Design course, featuring 70-plus permaculture experts from around the globe, all at a 46% discount off the value of the package. Join today to level up your soils. Financing options are now available, so you can pay at your own pace with a firm. If you're not ready to dig into the full foundation courses, we have something to suit every pocket, such as the Soil Food Web Essentials course. This is an accessible, low-cost, and minimal time commitment course for newbies and those wanting to refresh and expand their soil knowledge. Venture into the transformative world of essential ecology, microbiology, and soil stewardship. Explore the science and vision of soil life with Dr. Elaine Ingham and a global team of soil educators, so you can level up your collaboration with living systems on farms, gardens, or landscapes. Take advantage of this great offer to level up your soils today with the Soil Food Web Essentials course for just $199.
Okay, great. So just here is a reminder, the offer for the Level Up Your Soil package ends tomorrow. And we also have the Soil Food Web Essentials at a very available price as well. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to contact the school and we'll be happy to help you and get to work with you as soon as possible. Good. So now we are moving into the Q&A section. So this is the moment where we have some questions from the participants, and the panelists are going to be interacting and sharing all of their thoughts and experience with us. So first one here is from Charlie, and we have a forest fire burned a lot of forest on my family ranch in New Mexico. We have a lot of restoration work to do. We have a great opportunity to help the soil recover. Do you have any suggestions or references in burnt forest management and soil regeneration? So, who would like to start?
Okay, so I think I can jump in here because to me, when I hear about especially like a rip-roaring hot fire going through an area, I think that's returning you to a very early stage of succession in that ecosystem. So then what are the first plants that come in? They're going to be earlier successional plants, things that we might call more weedy species, right? And there's going to be a lot of bacteria that start to come into that system. So how do we shift it? It's kind of like we're thinking through, like, can we fast forward that process of succession? How do we shift it? We teach here at the school how to make the kinds of inputs and do the kinds of management that can speed that process up, because with more people on Earth and more desire to have these forest resources regenerated rapidly, we really need to be about this business of saying, if an ecosystem gets knocked back, especially due to maybe human activities, right? We expect more frequent fires because of human activities in the future. What can we do as humans to kind of encourage that system along in its pathway back to succession? And that's really, Elaine has taught in the foundation courses. Everyone here at the school, Carla and Loida, work with students every day to help them create these fungal dominant inputs, right? To get that system shifted back. And you too, Denise, you're a huge part of teaching students directly how to do this, the craft and the science of good biological inputs.
Thank you, Adam, for your response. Yes, go ahead, Carla.
Just jumping a little bit to complement what Adam said, I would encourage to also look for what generated this fire. Like, it was intentionally, what was the, natural, right, or intentionally? And what's your goal with this regeneration? Do you want to go back to close to the original as possible? So then you have to look for references in ecological restoration, the native plants that had on this region, and really build a plan, but remember that this plan needs to be dynamic. Every time that work with biology needs to be flexible. So pay attention to what's going on, which route the system is going, and how much you need to give it a boost or not. So work with nature, like Elaine says, every single time.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add up to this one? So we can move forward. Good. So this one's from Mike. Why do you feel we are moving away from historical best practices for growing methods? The excuse is we have more people to feed. However, there are farmers that are paid not to grow crops. How do you feel this can be changed? Is this going to be a farm by farm decision? What do you guys think?
Well, Elaine here. So I think that some of the rhetoric that goes with people who want to sell you toxic chemical materials, they want to get the organisms in the soil dead so that the only thing that can be grown rely on inorganic fertilizers, pesticides, those kinds of things. You know, we have more people to feed. Can we keep up with those people to feed? And absolutely, the answer is yes. We don't want to be destroying the soil and our ability to hold nutrients in that soil. We want to increase that all the time. And the best and easiest way to increase that is to make more organic matter that sits in the soil and collects the nutrients, helps balance pH, does all these things. But the reason that organic matter gets to do storage and to build structure and all of that is because the biology you have in it. Which plants do you want to grow? Which ones are gonna feed your people the things they want to be fed, you know, their favorite foods? And so we make sure that we learn how to make that, and we can increase dramatically the amount of acres that we could grow, or we could take the existing acreage, improve the biology in that soil, and get to the point where we don't have to co-opt any more land in order to feed the people that we've doubled or tripled by the time we would actually have things under control and be able to do this work. Now, is this going to be a farm by farm decision? Well, you look worldwide, and every way of trying to force farmers to do their job of growing plants is, you know, it's country by country, it's city by city, town to town, village by village. You know, some people are forced to grow unhealthy, you know, tobacco or things that are not really healthy for you, but you can make a lot of money. Well, that's not going to be something that we can really influence. We can't change that, but we certainly could change the damage that's done by moving to a biological approach.
I would like to add.
Oh, go ahead, Loida.
Go ahead, Loida.
So I would like to chime in on that as well, because I think that one of the reasons why we've moved away from these practices, traditional practices, is because it doesn't make money for big ag companies. And as far as, how do we change? Is this going to be, I think the policies in most countries do not support or facilitate, or support a farmer to make these changes. There might be some superficial policies that appear as if they are supporting farmers, but at least the farmers that I've worked with do not get the level of support from their governments for transitioning away from this chemical dependency. And so, my personal, but part of the reason why I'm with Soil Food Web School, because I'm also a consultant, right? Part of the reason why I chose to come to Soil Food Web is because I learned that really the biggest impact that we're going to make is farm by farm, right? Providing the farmers with the tools necessary for them to, transition out of this chemical dependency that they've been on for decades or centuries. And so I realized that I was moving very slowly, consulting one client at a time, right? So when Dr. Elaine put together the Soil Food Web School, and she asked if I would come to be a mentor, I thought to myself, that's great. I can teach other people to do what I do. And instead of there being one or two or three or four of me, there can be dozens and hundreds and hopefully thousands of me around the world helping these farmers make these transitions. So that's what we hope to achieve here at Soil Food Web, to get students enrolled into these courses and programs so that they can eventually become consultants, soil consultants, and do some of the soil work to, and to help farmers get through these changes.
I would like to add that I also think when we are thinking about whose decision is this, it's not only up for the producer, but also the consumer, right? So the consumer also needs to understand what they are buying, what they're getting, and being more responsible over what they want to get. I think it goes both ways. There's a lot of lobbying and a lot of politics involved, but there's also the opportunity to do a lot of education. And as Loida said, we're trying to get to as many people as possible. Working with farmers is, of course, the more direct way, but one of the things that is very inspiring for me as a mentor is that a lot of the students are also involved into communication of all of these within their communities, the schools that they work around with, if they have families, with the kids they have or the kids from their community. So that's also part of it. Like, how do we change this at a level where we are also communicating with all the people that's part of the communities and start to spread the word and create not only the decision from the farmer, but also the decision from the consumer to look for people who is producing things in a better way, in a more healthy way. So yes, anyone else that wants to add something here? Let's move on. Radley, so someone recently told me that if you cut a grass hay, the roots below will almost instantly die back to the height of the blade of grass. They said they're always balanced with the height above the ground and below. Is there truth to that?
No, not at all. It's just pure, excuse the French here, but it's BS. You can do an experiment on your own. You have to be able to get the soil back into the system, because if you have terribly compacted, no good life left in your soil, then it does look like you know, the roots will only go down 3 inches and the height of the grass, you know, slowly grows. Well, that's because you're in a really bad condition. You're trying to grow your grass on dirt and not on soil. So we have lots and lots and lots of pictures. And if you take the foundation courses, we go through a section that shows you a lot of those pictures where, you know, here's the turf, here's without any addition of the biology. So turf without, you know, just standard chemical applications. And then we split part of the material in that turf areas where we had put in big pipes that down into the soil so that we could in both the soil and the treatment and the sorry, I'm a little shaky this morning, I think. We have the no treatment at all continuing, and then we have the plus biology. And within the course of just one growth in the summer from something like, I think everything was put into the plants in the beginning of July. And we took the final samples in October, November, in that time. And in the chemical treated, the root systems never got more than 3 centimeters, so about 5 inches down into the soil, and that was it. They never went any deeper. So how could they be good and healthy above soil? They had to use inorganic fertilizers and pesticides, but when we are just on the other side of the line where we started using biology, we looked at how deep did those root systems go. And in that turf, it was down at about 6 to 8 feet, not inches. Feet is how deep that those root systems went. We did not have to irrigate it in that part of the system. We did not have to put on any inorganic fertilizers, and we had much higher nitrogen contents in the biological treatment. I mean, all the things that we've been talking about that we just finished up with Simeon's overview. So this is proven to be not true if you have soil.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Let's move on to the next one. So Charlie, in regards to applying compost teas and extracts to turf, grasses, and or pasture prairies, what was the thought process behind using compost extracts? Because it was a soil drench versus on actively growing turf. I have been applying compost teas on our pasture, but have been wondering if an extract will be a better application.
Well, I think you really want to look at the soil to determine if that's where the problem lies. If you don't have any decent biology, or you have very poor amounts of biology, or if you're missing whole groups, you know, we have no protozoa, we have no nematodes, we don't have any fungi, all we've got is bacteria, you're going to be in a lot of trouble trying to make things work really well. So applications of compost teas get the biology above ground. So you spray the bottom part of your leaves instead of just the tops, but try to get everything drenched so that no matter what, your leaves and your plants are protected against those disease-causing organisms. So where are your missing links? You've got to get that microscope out, and you've got to figure out whether it's on the leaf surfaces, or if it's an extract that should go down onto the surface, and all those cute little critters in the soil running around will walk up the stems of your plants, move to areas that will protect the plant. The plant itself will be able to produce immune agents all over their above ground and below ground biomass, so that it's just it's not possible for diseases and pests to attack and wipe out your organisms. So a drench is really meant to help the compost that you just put on probably to get over the shock for most of those organisms. When you're moving the compost around, you're raking it, so that it's nice and even, or just dumping it on the ground. You are slicing and dicing a certain percentage of those organisms. So coming along behind with a soil drench, an extract, is going to help those organisms manage. It's a little bit of extra go juice for your microorganisms. Okay.
Awesome. And I read from Charlie on the chat that he would like also to know about why did Simeon decide to do this on his specific project. So maybe you want to add something, Simeon?
Yeah, so I was going with extracts primarily, just so I started with teas on that campus that I was doing it, and it just wasn't scalable in the fact that to make enough to cover 57-acre campus, you'd have to make a lot of teas. It takes a lot of time, a lot of cleaning, a lot of maintenance and checking of the brews and stuff. So extracts are just easier to make and make on a large scale. I've found in my experience you have better diversity in the extracts because your whatever was in the compost will be in your extract versus trying to grow out certain strains in your teas. And then I was using it as my liquid base for my fertility program. So I was doing a full sap testing program every 4 weeks. I was sap testing and then adding in the few nutrients that I saw that was needed in the tissues of the sap, of the plants. So it could have been some boron or some molybdenum, some nitrogen, whatever was needed in small amounts in the liquid. So it's that much more efficiently applied than doing a granular application. So I just found extracts are more scalable in terms of user friendliness and actually getting out there and doing it. And they also have a longer shelf life. So if you have some problem, something breaks or bad weather or something, and you can't get out there, you don't have to throw it all away. You could just save it for the next day. So
just keep the aerator going.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Simeon. Let's move on to the next one. Megan says, where do you see holes or gaps in this soil revolution?
Well, we haven't managed to have samples from every different kind of ecosystem and the diversity that they have, or even for the various different biomes. We don't know exactly what the amount of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, earthworms, encotriids, all of that. What are the balances that we should have on this plant every place in the world that we're trying to grow it? We've got some missing gaps in there. We'd like to be able to say to you, well, we do say that we have minimum levels. So we've got those levels for, gosh, if you're below these minimum values, you're just, put on another, you need to go out and put on another application. But is it the same from system to system? So you need to be taking your microscope and looking at what the biology actually is. What is the biomass of the bacteria and fungi? What are the numbers of the protozoa and the nematodes? So that if anything's missing or too low, or maybe too high, how do you get everything balanced for the plant you're trying to grow? Well, we've got to have people that are out there looking at, okay, here's the plant I want to grow. I want max amount of production, or I want the max amount of color, or whatever criteria you want to use for what you're trying to sell this as. So you want to have it then a series of, is it real bacteria? Is it a little bit of fungi, real close? Does your plant need 1-to-1 ratio of fungi to bacteria to do the best? Keep going. Now we've got the bacteria are now lower than the fungi. Well, what kinds of plants do you grow there? And then as you get more and more fungal and bacterial levels off, you will always have a good amount of bacteria in any soil. But it's now what's the fungal doing? And we set the stage to grow orchard trees or aspens, deciduous trees, and then finally the conifers and the ancient old I'm not going to get the name out this morning. This is what happens when you're 71 years old. The brain goes off into someplace else. So the ancient trees, you start them young and they grow and grow and grow, and your descendants 2,000 years from now will be very happy that you started those perennial plants. So we don't know for every place in the world. We don't know what these values are. We've got, most of the agricultural parts of the world. We've done enough. We have a good idea, but we don't have everything.
Well said. Anybody else wants to add up something?
In my perspective, I think that not necessarily a gap, but we need to invest more, is to not understand, but to translate all the knowledge that's been developed about the whole food chain on how enhancing biology in the soil, enhancing the soil, is translated in nutrient content in the food that we eat. So this would help us to boost up the green market, and also the society naturally would help push the general system to change to a more biological approach. Because who doesn't want to eat organic with a price of regular food? So I think that's the whole chain needs to be fully understand and work side by side.
Completely agree, Carla. I was just thinking about that, how we need to start to connect everything from the very theoretical scientific basis to the end products and make that chain in order for the whole thing to work out and for everybody to be able to understand it as well. Good. Yeah. Let's move on.
Actually, I just wanted to agree with both of you guys. I think the general public is still very ignorant about how their food is grown, and I think that reaching out. We reach out to Soil Food Web reaches out to a certain sector of like an underground world, right? Of people who are interested in improving the environment or restoring ecosystems or improving the way agriculture functions. But that's just a certain sector of the world. Like the general public is still very ignorant, and I think there needs to be some kind of education that somebody that reaches out, organizations that reach out or fill those gaps of knowledge for the general public, maybe in the schools, maybe in elementary, incorporating some kind of activities in elementary or in junior high school, teach students, kids love playing with soil, so teaching kids how to, plant a potato and watch it grow. I think that's going to grow interest in the general public, and that child is going to grow up thinking, having a little bit more insight about and thinking a little bit more about their food. Because oftentimes, part of the time I live in Los Angeles, right? And people are very healthy conscious there. Like they want to eat healthy, and they think, oh, if I just eat a salad, I'm eating healthy. But what they don't realize is that the nutrient content of that raw vegetables and fruits and nuts and things like that is much lower today than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. They're not aware of that. So it's the general public awareness, I think, that is another gap that we need to fill.
Denise, could I have 60 seconds with
Of
this
course.
one? I want to affirm everything that I just heard. I love working with you brilliant people. I also want to talk about the other side of the coin. I got excited about soils. I started my journey towards being a soil nerd 15 years ago, and it was from talking with farmers about how important soils were. And I have seen the emergence of such amazing information, knowledge, public awareness through the last 15 years. And I just have this sense that we are right on this, like when the seed is about ready to pop out of the ground, it's going to change everything here. And what we're doing, meeting here, sharing the message, it all matters. The gaps are being filled in, the gaps in our knowledge, the gaps in, you can show large scale regenerative farms now and ranches. We can talk about books where people have these success stories. The revolution is here.
That is so inspiring, Adam. Thank you so much for also bringing that up, because it is true. And we inside the school see it every day with all of the students who are so enthusiastic about what they're doing, and they're telling everybody in their communities and their families. And I have students working, involving their kids, involving their families. So you are right. This is already happening, and all of us are part of that. Good. Let's move on so we get a couple of questions more. What would be the relationship between tillage frequencies, 1 to 5 times cultivation, and the application of herbicides on the beneficial soil microorganisms and soil physiochemical properties or overall soil health?
Well, let's see. It's tillage 1 to 5 times cultivating. And why? Why would you need to use that? What is it that you're going after? And most of the time it's to do weed control. Well, what other way do you have to control weeds? So you don't have to do tillage at all. Throw it out the door, because every time you till, you are reducing the beneficial organisms in your soil by 50%, half of the improvement that you could have gotten. You wiped it out because you tilled the soil. And we just, this hasn't been communicated to everyone because they want you to buy their very expensive products and put that out and supposedly control the factor. How many of you have ever ended up with no weeds at all because you use tillage? Yeah, they come right back, right? Whatever's in your seed bank, up they come again, and now you've got, that's why you have to do it 1 to 5 times. So turn to another approach. Get the right biology back into that soil, balanced for what that plant needs, and you can stop tilling. Now, what if you don't put any plants in after you have put the good biology out there? Well, you want to put something in, get some seeds out and grow clover or whatever you want, but put another plant in that will prevent any of the weedy species to come along. Okay, application of herbicides, the beneficial soil microorganisms. When you wipe out your soil, you apply that herbicide, and please realize that most of our herbicides are in fact sterilants. They aren't going to kill just herbs. That's not, those weedy species, not going to be the only thing that will be affected. So you're reducing your beneficial soil population down to, maybe if you're lucky, it's going to get to 5%. You lose 95% of the beneficial organisms in that soil when you use toxic chemicals. Slightly different pathways that they wipe out these organisms, but ultimately downstream, you don't have any beneficial organisms left in the soil. Good luck. So we don't want to be killing them. We want to be enhancing them. We want to bring things along so that they're balanced in the right way. And once you've gotten things balanced and they're capable of staying in that balance, through a whole entire year, second year, third year, fourth year, all you might have to be doing is putting a little bit more food in to affect things just a little bit and keep everything happy. How much work is that? Think about the work that you're doing right now, driving up and down and up and down and up and down in your field. You don't have to do that. My secret wish is to develop a drone that will go out and spray everywhere I tell it in the field of crops that I have, and I can just stand at the top of the hill and tell them where to go and how much to spray. How much would that cost?
That'll be amazing. Yes, and one of the things I think about is the metaphor of the web, right? So imagining, for example, a spider web. If you go and knock it down, how long does it take to build it again, right? So every time you are adding these disturbances into a web, it's going to take time to go back up. It's going to destroy what has been built, and then it has to be rebuilt over and over again. Sometimes there's not enough time for that process in order for the plant to actually get the benefits of the nutrients in the soil. So that's part of it. Someone else wants to add up to this one, or should we move forward? Okay. OM. The current industrial agricultural systems involve tilling the land and using machineries that result in poor soil or dirt. How will we continue to improve the soil while also still producing the same amount of food to feed growing population? Would we have to shift to more perennial trees for our food source? Because as of right now, we rely a lot on annuals, which need regular tilling that is detrimental to soil life, or is there a way to improve soil while still growing annuals?
Well, if you have an annual crop, then you're going to be, taking that, cutting that, and taking the product off. But what you need for the soil is to have planted a short, low-growing, that grows year after year after year, perennial. There we go. So you want perennial things growing underneath as a second layer, because you want to protect that soil from raindrops. And raindrops, when they fall on the soil, that's a lot of energy instantly released, kind of like a bomb of some kind from a microorganism's point of view. So you want to protect that soil surface. The water needs to drop onto the leaves of our plants in the system. There's where most of your energy hits, and then the drop of water hits the soil with only a couple of inches of movement of falling through to that surface. So you don't lose the organisms in your soil, you don't lose the organic matter. You build the structure so that drop of water now instantly starts moving down deep, deep, deep into your soil. So it will be there when your plant needs it come the dry summer periods. So we just have to alter what we're putting in there. So because if you've got perennial plants in the understory, again, no weeds. We prevent those weeds from growing by making certain that the balance of fungi to bacteria do not in any way promote the seeds from germinating and growing, or if they do germinate, then they are outcompeted, inhibited, and consumed. Okay, so we don't have to think that we're so stuck in having to till, not at all.
Great. So we are on top of the hour. Thank you, everyone, and the panelists, of course, for being present here and answering all of these questions. Just as a reminder, and as we said at the beginning, this was the last one of the series, but we have 3 other webinars that have been recorded and are available for everybody to watch on our YouTube channel and also on webinar.soilfoodweb.com. So you can have access to all of them, including today's webinar. And once again, I want to thank everybody that has participated today, all of you joining from everywhere, and of course, our amazing panelists and part of our amazing team. We're always here, so anybody who wants to join, they know they can contact us. And here are also our different channels where you can watch what we do and also get in contact. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Don't forget to click that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to stay updated with all our new videos.